What is cross-securitization? Should you use it? And what are its pitfalls and what are its pros? Really simply answered, cross-securitization is when a lender takes one asset, let's say you have a home worth $1 million, a $500,000 loan on it, and you're going to buy an investment property, call it $600,000, and they'll do one loan, say of $630,000 including costs, against the $600,000 asset, but also using their existing home as a second security. So there's two securities for the one loan. Generally, as mortgage brokers, we want to avoid this at all costs for a couple of really important reasons. The first one is of protection of your assets. We always want to plan what if something goes wrong. So let's use that example and look at the possible downfalls to it. So you've bought an asset for $600,000. You've got a loan of $630,000, also secured by your family home. What happens down the track if you need to sell this asset and it's at a time the property hasn't grown? You can't actually release it because you may resell it for $600,000, but you owe $630,000, less your agent's costs. You're not actually getting enough money to release that property. And so we've seen this happen in the past where our clients come to us, they've sold their property, but the bank's not going to release it because it's also linked to another asset and they're not getting enough capital to pay out the loan. This is actually a common occurrence. So how can you avoid that? Well, generally speaking, in this exact circumstance, the way we would do things, the existing home, $1 million, we would set up a second facility against that. So it has a $500,000 owner-occupied loan. We then turn around and let's just say release $200,000 worth of equity, where they can use that equity to pay a deposit over here. That allows the properties to be split down the middle. You can even go to a separate lender and there's no cross-securitizing the loans. There's simply one loan against this asset and another loan against this asset. That's always the best way to go around setting up your properties and setting up your loan structure if you're able to. So there are circumstances where you might actually choose to do cross-securitization. Let's just pretend you have 4 or 5 properties and you want to be able to release the equity from those properties to use to fund more purchases down the track. And let's say from each property, you might be able to access $100,000. So if you're refinancing 4 separate assets, you're in a strong position and you don't want to have 4 separate loan applications, 4 separate loan splits of $100,000. You just want to have one facility of $400,000. This is where sometimes a client will request, no, Martin, just do one loan. I understand the risks of cross-securing, but I'd rather do that and just simplify my finances and have one large loan split of $400,000 than lots of smaller ones. That's a great time where you may utilize it, but you're going into it understanding the risks of cross-securitization, and in this case, the benefits due to how they're going to manage those funds. Something we will see often is clients coming to us who've got a number of different loans. They're not even aware it's been cross-securitized. They're planning to maybe sell one of the properties and they want to restructure all their finances. So if you've got, say, an owner-occupied home, an investment property, and you've been directly to the bank, 9 times out of 10, they're going to use cross-securitization. So we've actually got an example of this right now. Someone's bought a property, $800,000 investment loan. They've actually got an $880,000 loan against that property, cross-secured with their family residence. So they're now wanting to actually sell that family residence, and we had to go through it and say, well, if you do this, you'll potentially have issues or won't get all your capital back at sale because the bank's going to withhold some of that money because they can't leave the $800,000 property sitting there with an $880,000 mortgage against it. So what we do in this circumstance, we go in, we restructure all their mortgages. We do an 80% loan against the actual investment property. So we're lowering that loan down to 80% of the $800,000. We'll then set up another facility against their current owner-occupied property that is enough to cover the difference there. So when they go to sell their asset, this one can be left alone and the bank won't come after that, or say we need to hold back extra funds to use as a security against that existing property. So it's quite easy to unwind assets if they've been cross-secured, so long as you have the right amount of equity in other properties to do so. So let's look at some key takeaways. The first thing is Where possible, always avoid cross-securitization. That's where it's important to go to a finance professional, not just a lender or a mortgage broker who does traditional basic loans. You need to understand the structure, what you're trying to achieve long term, and set up your facilities so that it actually helps you win and build out the portfolio that you're trying to do, and structure things in a way so you don't have to be giving the bank multiple properties for each loan, and it's secured in a way to protect you and to protect your personal assets, not to give the bank unrequired security.